Imagine you're walking in a forest. You see trees, bugs, birds, and maybe a deer. But you also see rocks, soil, and sunlight. An ecosystem is all of these things, the living and non-living interacting with each other. Everything in an ecosystem is connected, and to understand how it works, we have to look at how two important things, matter and energy, move through it. So what's the difference between matter and energy? Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space, like the atoms that make up a tree or an animal. The good news is, matter is recycled in an ecosystem. It's used over and over again. Energy is different. Energy is the ability to do work. It's what makes things move and grow. Energy flows through an ecosystem in one direction, and once it's used, it's gone. It's not recycled like matter is. Where does all the energy in an ecosystem come from? It all starts with the sun. The sun is the ultimate power source for almost every living thing on Earth. It radiates energy in the form of sunlight. But an animal can't just absorb sunlight and use it for food. So how does that energy get into the food chain? That's where producers come in. Producers are organisms that can make their own food using the sun's energy. Think of them as the chefs of the ecosystem. They use a process called photosynthesis to turn sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into food. Plants and algae are the most common producers, and they form the base of every food chain. Next, we have the consumers. Consumers are organisms that can't make their own food, so they have to eat other things to get the energy they need. They are like the diners in the ecosystem's restaurant. They get their energy by eating producers or other consumers. Consumers can be broken down into three types. Herbivores are the plant eaters, like a rabbit munching on grass. Carnivores are the meat eaters, like a lion hunting a zebra. And omnivores are the ones that eat both plants and meat, like a bear enjoying some berries and a fish. So what happens when an organism dies? That's where decomposers come in. Decomposers, like fungi and bacteria, are the cleanup crew and the recyclers of the ecosystem. They break down dead organisms and waste. This process releases the matter, the carbon, nitrogen, and other atoms, back into the soil and air so that new plants can use it to grow. Without decomposers, the world would be covered in dead stuff. A food chain is a simple way to show how energy is transferred from one organism to the next. It's a straight line. For example, grass is a producer. A rabbit eats the grass. A fox eats the rabbit. The energy from the sun goes from the grass to the rabbit and then to the fox. It shows a single, one-way path of energy. But in real life, it's a little more complicated. Most organisms eat more than one thing. A fox might eat a rabbit, but it might also eat a mouse or a bird. To show all these connections, we use a food web. A food web is a network of interconnected food chains, and it gives us a much more realistic picture of how energy flows through an ecosystem. Now, here's an important principle of energy flow. It's not a very efficient process. When an organism eats another, only about 10% of the energy is passed on. The other 90% is used by the organism to live, move, and grow, and some is lost as heat. This is why food webs are shaped like a pyramid. There is a lot of energy at the bottom, and less as you move up the pyramid to the top predators. Unlike energy, matter is not lost. It's constantly being recycled. Think about the atoms that make up your body. Some of them might have been part of a dinosaur millions of years ago. Matter cycles through the ecosystem, moving from living things to the environment and back again. Decomposers are vital because they are the ones that break down dead things and return the matter to the soil. A great example is the carbon cycle. Plants take in carbon from the air. When an animal eats the plant, it gets the carbon atoms. When the animal breathes out, it releases carbon back into the air. And when the animal dies, decomposers break it down, releasing the carbon back into the soil and atmosphere. It's a never-ending cycle of carbon. The water cycle is another essential matter cycle. Water evaporates from oceans and lakes, forms clouds, and falls back to Earth as rain. All living things need water. The water we drink today is the same water that has been on Earth for billions of years, just in a different place and a different form. It's always being recycled. With all this information, we can now construct explanations for how things happen in an ecosystem. A good explanation connects evidence to a scientific principle. It's not just a guess, it's a reasoned argument. We'll use our knowledge of energy flow and matter cycling to make sense of what we observe. Let's go back to our forest. Imagine we see trees, deer, wolves, and fungi. We want to explain how these different parts are connected. We can think about the flow of energy and the cycling of matter. Here's our first explanation, focused on energy. We observe sunlight hitting the trees. We know that as producers, the trees capture that energy. A deer eats the tree, getting some of its energy. A wolf eats the deer, getting some of its energy. Our explanation is that energy flows from the sun to the producers and then to the consumers in a food chain, with energy being lost at each step. Now let's construct an explanation for matter. We observe that when a tree falls to the ground, it eventually disappears. We know that the decomposers, the fungi and bacteria, are breaking down the tree. Our explanation is that the atoms and molecules that made up the tree are not gone. They are being recycled. The decomposers return that matter to the soil, where a new tree can absorb it and grow. The key to a strong explanation is using evidence and reasoning. For example, our evidence is that a wolf must eat to survive. Our reasoning is that this shows us that the wolf needs to get energy from another organism. This evidence and reasoning support the scientific principle of energy flow through a food chain. Unfortunately, humans can disrupt these delicate cycles. When we burn fossil fuels, we release a huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere, which throws off the natural carbon cycle. When we cut down forests, we reduce the number of trees that can absorb that extra carbon. These actions can have a big effect on our global climate. To wrap things up, remember these two key ideas. Energy flows in a single direction, starting with the sun and moving through food chains. And matter is constantly recycled through ecosystems, with decomposers acting as the essential recyclers. By using these principles, we can construct explanations that help us understand the amazing and interconnected world around us.